What is assessment? Why do you need to give assessment to your students? Cite and explain 3 types of assessment. Assessment is the process of gathering and discussing information from multiple and diverse sources in order to develop a deep understanding of what students know and understand and can do with their knowledge as a result of their educational experiences. It may also refers to the wide variety of methods or tools that educators use to evaluate, measure, and document the academic readiness, learning progress, skill acquisition, or educational needs of students. Assessment is the process of identifying individual students' weaknesses and strengths so that educators can provide specialized academic support, educational programming, or social services. Besides, assessment is developed by a wide array of groups and individuals including teachers, district administrators, universities, private companies, state departments of education, and groups that include a combination of these individuals and institutions. Assessment is critical to the educational process. Without them, a teacher or I as a future educator would never know when to move on the next subject or how to help students understand concepts better. That is why there is a need for me to give an assessment to my students. More than that, I need to stand and to set or to find some time to give an assessment to my students because assessment is the engine which drives student learning and motivation. When my students are able to see how they are doing in the class, they will be able to determine whether or not they understand the course material. And if my students will know that they are doing poorly, it may push and may let them begin to work or to learn harder. Assessment will then give me an idea of what my students learn in my course, how will they learn it, and where they struggle. To pick, I need to give assessment to my students for it will serve as a lens for understanding or measuring their learning, for identifying invisible barriers which hinder their growth, and it will help me to improve my teaching approaches to be able to have my students' needs and be satisfied and to meet the curriculum's objectives. There are various types of assessment that a teacher and a future educator like me could use in the teaching and learning process. 3 of these types of assessment are formative assessment, summative assessment, and performance assessment. A formative assessment is a process of evaluating the student's knowledge as they learn. It is a method of ongoing assessment and it involves putting together a series of quick-fire questions and exercises to help teachers monitor the learner's progress during a course. The general purpose of formative assessment is to give educators in-process feedback about what students are learning or not learning, so the instructional approaches, teaching materials, and academic support can be modified accordingly. However, formative assessment are usually not scored or graded. To keep up, summative assessment, unlike formative assessment, happens at the end of the course. It is an assessment administered at the end of an instructional unit in a course. It is intended to evaluate student learning by comparing performance to a standard or benchmark. It is then evaluative rather than diagnostic. It is used to measure whether a course learning objectives were met, and it is often high stakes or have a high point value. Example of summative assessment include midterm exams, a final exam, or a final project. Lastly, a performance-based assessment, also known as authentic assessment, is a type of assessment that typically requires students to complete a complex task, such as writing assignment, science experiment, speech presentation, performance, or long-term project. This assessment measures how well students apply their knowledge, skill, and abilities to authentic problems or tasks, and it is developed along with scoring guides, rubrics, and other methods to evaluate whether the work produced by students shows that they have learned what they were expected to learn. Discuss the importance of knowing grammar to you as a future English teacher. Grammar describes how a language goes or works, and as a future English teacher, it is important for me to know and to get acquainted with it, most especially that it is what is expected to me. Thus, I must become equipped with knowledge about grammar or to become adept in using grammar as future English teacher because its importance and the benefits it can give in me and in the teaching learning process is of superabundance. Firstly, by knowing grammar, I will be able to efficiently and effectively play my role in conveying ideas. I could be able to teach language and hasten my students' proficiency in language productively. I will be able to express myself confidently as a teacher with the right grammar command, respect, and positive outlook from my students. And by mastering proper grammar, I could inspire my student to also strive harder in learning the language and the grammar itself. Second, by knowing grammar as a future English teacher will help me to better understand the meaning conveyed by sentences or to make sense of the sentences and paragraphs. Notably, that I and my future student will be interacting with a number of texts and compositions. It will also help me in modifying or adjusting my approach, construction, and wordings to the extent that it will be interesting, precise, and understandable at the end of my students. Moreover, the knowledge of sentence structure that grammar have will aid me in interpreting the literatures and in extracting the correct ideas to be presented in my students. Lastly, the importance of knowing grammar to me as a future English teacher is that it will help me to have a structural foundation of my ability to express myself. It will assist me more to monitor the meaning and effectiveness of the way I and others use language. It can help me to detect ambiguity, to assess and configure the development of my students with respect to language or language usage. And it will help me to establish a connection with my students for grammar lays the groundwork for effective communication. As a future English teacher, how do you apply your knowledge of types of grammar? Different types of grammar explicit the ideas about the different ways of analyzing the structures and functions of language. And with that, its knowledge could be something that is very applicable in my classroom as a future English teacher. Prescriptive grammar is the type of grammar which tells people how to use the English language, what forms they should utilize, and what functions they should serve. Hence, the knowledge I got from this type of grammar will help me to teach my students or to make them aware of what is the common standard of usage in English language. For example, the word less should go with mass nouns, and the word fewer should go with count nouns. Equally, I could apply my knowledge on this type of grammar to reduce confusion when checking or probing my future students' writings or speeches and in mentoring oral presentations or handling publications in school if ever that I will be given a chance or responsibilities on such things. Descriptive grammar is another type of grammar. It's not saying how English language should be used. However, it focuses on describing the English language as it is used, and it is also not saying that there is a right or wrong way to use language. To continue as future English teacher, I can apply my knowledge on this when making the language learners that I have to understand the applied usage of language and how to communicate better with native speakers. Simultaneously, as a future English teacher, I will apply my knowledge about functional type of grammar, which is based on systemic linguistics that emphasizes the way spoken and written language operate in different social situations through illustrating or showing to my students how texts work beyond the level of the sentence, how different texts are structured, and how language varies to suit the purpose of the users. Besides, I will apply the same knowledge when I will be using the language in a social context, and when I am going to provide my students with deep and brief knowledge on how language can be used to write and speak more appropriately and effectively. Finally, as a future English teacher, I will apply my knowledge and pedagogical grammar or pedagogical type of grammar through teaching and designing an approach or strategy to help the learners of second language to learn the most important grammar ideas and most powerful conventions of the language. For once the learners have grabbed this, they can set about learning the rest of the language which they think is important to them. Explain the nature of teaching. The nature of teaching is causing to learn. It is the act of engaging with learners to enable their understanding and application of knowledge, concepts, and processes. It is the act of imparting instruction or learning to the learners. It is getting students involved in the active construction of knowledge, and it is the process of attending to learners' needs, experiences, and feelings and making specific involvement to help them learn particular things. Teaching is also the act of providing activities that facilitate learning. Teaching means having both the qualities and responsibilities of a teacher and a facilitator. It is providing resources, monitoring progress, and encouraging students to become the best versions of themselves. Likewise, it is developing and imposing activities that require learners to apply their knowledge, to have the task done, and to have the problem solved, whereby realizing the goals of education and the school. In its broadest sense, teaching is something that takes place only when learning does. It is the specialized application of knowledge, skills, and attributes designed to provide unique service to meet the educational needs of the individuals and of society. It is providing students with learning opportunities to meet the curriculum outcomes. It is emphasizing the development of values. It is guiding students in making relationships. It is employing practices that develop positive self-concept in students. It is a call for the exercise of talent and creativity. It even means investigating your personal time, energy, and resources. Sometimes it means disappointments, heartaches, and pains. Yet, on the top of everything, the nature of teaching is touching the hearts or lives of the people and opening the minds of children, giving joy, causing contentment which money could not buy, and shaping or giving hope not just for the future but for the whole world.